Hi, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome to the discussion here. Um, my name is MUX NARASIMHAN, and I'm here to give a brief overview on biomimicry and sustainability in real estates. Thank you very much. My partner in crime here is Mr. Rajesh Solanki, joining in with
Hello,
me,
hello
and
everyone.
we are here to talk a little bit about biomimicry and sustainability. And it's a for some people it may be a very new concept, so we'll spend some time going through some slide deck, and then we will make it an open discussion forum for Q&A. Okay, very good. So can we go ahead, Rajesh?
Yes, absolutely. I am logged in on Unisu also and on StreamYard also.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to talk about biomimicry and sustainability in real estate, and this is streaming live currently in Ari Connect. Thanks very much for James, the CEO of Ari Connect, for Unisu for making this happen for us. Rajesh and myself are indebted to Unisu for making this happen. All right. So we'll jump into first this concept of you know how old Mother Nature is. Mother Nature is billions of years old. And how old are humans really? On the planet, since we have set foot, probably about 250,000 years. So we're still the babies on the planet. And we are supposed to reflect what Mother Nature is, like the water, which reflects exactly what's outside, right? Are we actually mimicking that? Or are we behaving in our own unique way? Um, in that unique way, we're also causing some harm. So that's what we're here to talk about. So if you look at nature, nature has no waste, right? So nature recycles everything, right? Shouldn't we too, right? And it's very important concept how nature is, doing that recycling, right? You've got all these worms that in to a human they look like parasites, they look like something that is not good, but they are part and parcel of nature. They do a wonderful job of recycling everything that we throw away. Even the oil wastes that several large companies have accidentally happened have been digested by certain worms that are able to digest oil, right? So nature always comes up with solutions for human problems, and we should take the responsibility as well to do that. So if you look at what is biomimicry really, biomimicry is a method of creating solutions to human challenges by emulating designs and ideas found in nature, right? Nature already has it, has been doing it for billions of years. We just have to observe and see how we can make it relevant to our problems and create the designs and solutions accordingly. Such solutions are already in existence. Several brilliant ideas have come across, as you'll see in this presentation, which are already being applied in buildings, vehicles, even materials, right? So let's look at the very first example of that, peacock. Uh, how beautiful and vivid are the colors in the peacock's feather, right? Very striking. The feather of the peacock is built like a palm frond. You got the rigid stem, and then at the center of the feather with rows of tiny barbs, and then each of the barbs also subdivided into what is called as the barbules. The barbules themselves are built out of two different materials, keratin and melanin. Keratin is a material that the human body uses in, let's say, fingernails. It's the same material. And melanin is, of course, what is found on the pigment found on the human skin. So the color, if you look at it, it's just simply brown. There's no different color of these two materials. How do we achieve such vivid colors? By structural emulation, by creating the gaps and tapping into the spectrum of the air gaps, you get various colors, and that's how these colors are permanent and vivid. So these are, imagine the paint industry taking on this challenge and bringing in several ideas of that nature, where there's no wastage, there's no VOCs, volatile organic compounds, etc., to create the colors. Right? That's brilliant. That's nature for you. Here's an example where the Japanese, high-speed train has emulated the kingfisher beak. The kingfisher beak is very sharp, and basically it dives into the water without causing any vibrations on the water, so it can catch its prey without having any issues, without alerting the prey. And this is brilliant. And the problem that the high speed trains are facing is called as tunnel boom. When they enter the tunnel, there is a huge boom, acoustic shock that's created, and can sometimes structurally damage both the trains and the tunnel itself. So this particular shape was come up with by some Japanese design guys, and they basically mimicked a kingfisher beak. With that, they were able to reduce the overall energy consumed by almost 15% because of that beak-shaped front end, and also eliminate the tunnel boom completely. So here's another example where, if you look at the humpback whale, they're extremely agile. And how are they able to do that? Because of that, what do you call it, the tubercle effect. The flippers had these strange bumps on the flipper, and you can see that. And because of which they're more agile, and they use less energy to move. And Whale Power Corporation is a company that has used this concept by building their turbine blades in the shape that you see on the right hand side. And because of that, they're able to, they call this the tubercle technology. They were able to increase the energy efficiency production of the windmills by 10 to 15%. So here's another, everybody's seen a gecko, how they walk around on the walls, even upside down on the roof, right? How are they able to do that, right? If you look at the toe pads, the gecko possesses millions of hairs. It's called setae, and they act as soft membrane that can basically conform to surfaces. Those feet basically stick like glue without leaving any residue on the wall. And they're not sticky to touch per se. When you touch the feet, they're not sticky to touch, but when it presses down, it basically attaches itself and can carry its own weight on walls and on roofs. So this is a concept that is being used by a adhesive maker called GEXSkin. They integrated a soft elastomer, the pad, and the stiff fabric, which is the skin, allowing them to maximize contact. And this is, and also the adhesive leaves no residue, just like what it's supposed to. Right? Imagine the peeling off of adhesive from an apple. You're never able to do that, and that's because we don't use the gecko effect there, right? So here's another brilliant example. Maybe Rajesh, you can talk about this. How the termites have existed on Earth. People have a bad connotation of termites because of the damage that they do to wood, etc. But imagine what they've done here, right? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Rajesh. Yeah.
Yeah. So termites are a good example of how they can, trap heat and insulate a building, right? That's what you're talking about, isn't
Exactly. Yeah. So if you look at the way the structure of the termite band wrap, the termite, the place where the termites live, it's built. It's to be cool inside at no matter
Yeah.
what the external temperature is.
Yeah, they
And they've
trap
done it through proper traditional cross ventilation techniques. And there is a company in design firm Arup that has built an entire shopping center in Zimbabwe based on the natural convection system of a termite bed. And this is obviously improved the energy efficiency by almost 10 to 15% in using air conditioning. So next we're going to talk about the Stenocara beetle, right? Very, very interesting. This beetle lives in arid African Namib desert where water is really not available, and it needs water. And the way it is done is it is dime-sized critter. It's a very small size. It's like a size of a dime, US dime. Has evolutionary, what they've done is literally pull water out of thin air. There are companies now that are trying to do that, to emulate this. A pattern of nodes along the beetle's back that enable the creature to collect moisture from the morning fog, and the droplets then slide off the bumps inside into the small channels directly into the beetle's mouth. imagine, imagine. I mean, that's nature for you, right? Everything is thought out, well thought out, and designed perfectly for the beetle, which needs the water to survive. And humans are going around digging wells, using deep well, high power techniques to dig well out of water, whereas you could directly do this, right? So this is very, very interesting, right? The woodpecker, as you know, right, you can imagine the speed at which the woodpecker hits the wood, and imagine if it was doing it at that speed, what would happen to the woodpecker in terms of the vibrations, right? People have calculated the woodpeckers bore these holes, and the deceleration rate are almost 1200 Gs, which is almost 22 times per second, which is extremely high speed. So each crash would actually damage the beak if you were to think about it, right? But it doesn't happen like that, right? To put in perspective, a severe car crash is about 120 Gs. So this is 10 times a severe car crash. and what they've figured out is using video and CT scan research in UC Berkeley have 4 structures designed to absorb the mechanical shock. One is basically a semi-elastic beak. The beak is actually semi-elastic, and the area of a spongy bone. Area is made of a spongy bone behind the skull. So the cerebral fluid as well, right? All these 3 work in unison to extend the time over which this concussion occurs. Instead of immediate concussion, right, 22 times a second, that is delayed by a huge amount of time, and that way you're inhibiting the vibrations. And this is some brilliant work by the woodpeckers, obviously, and brilliant work in analyzing it by UC Berkeley. So let's talk a little bit overall about sustainability, right? Before we jump into Q&A, right? So what is sustainability, right? Prioritizing ecology over economy. That would be a very succinct way to define, sustainability, right? That way, what happens is you have the cycle that you see, right? You've got the inner circle, which is the economy, which is driving the growth of human economy first to begin with. Then it drives the growth of human society and also the ecology. So the human economy is actually a subset of first the human society, and then which is also a subset of the ecology at large, not just humans, the rest of the human beings, the rest of the animals and living beings on the planet, right? So if from what are we doing right now? If you look at we have reversed this over time, especially over the last 100 years of industrial revolution. What has happened is human economy is bigger than ecology, and human society is somewhere in between. We're stuck in between, which is why I think we are facing this whole global warming, climate change, all of those things. The nature can support up to a certain extent, but then after which it'll have to be about humans supporting themselves, right? So that's the idea. So if you look at key lessons of biomimicry, circular economy, right? Creating no waste, just like nature has no waste. Efficiency. Look at the human brain. The entire brain operates with all those millions of calculations and memory and RAM and ROM and whatnot under 12 volts. Think of a Google server and how much power it uses. Right? We are far away from that. So how do we get to that level of efficiency? Right? There's quantum computing coming, more innovations of using smaller and smaller powers to enable transactions and improvements in efficiency, right? And then get away from this whole fossil fuel economy and use renewable energy. And since renewable energy is a variable source depending on the use case, whether wind or solar is there or not, you need to couple it with storage. That storage does not necessarily need to be electrical. There are mechanical storages and additional other storages available. And quickly jump away from emissions EVs are an immediate way to do that, and that's why there's a huge push for it right now. And once hydrogen vehicles kick in, we can start looking at those, and that way there's no emissions coming out of the vehicles, right? But jumping into EVs before going into renewable energy is just pushing that whole pollution from the vehicle to the power plant. You don't want to do that. You want to do both in parallel, right? So Rajesh, with that presentation, I leave that to you, to give your thoughts on this whole sustainability and biomimicry. And it's a fairly new subject for me. In fact, I learned about it only a month or so ago during a talk that I listened to, given by RSD at IIT Madras. I forget the gentleman's name, but he gave a wonderful background on biomimicry, and that's how I got so interested in the subject. Go ahead, Rajesh.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Max. Thanks for the opportunity again. Um, you know, firstly, today is a dark day in terms of climate change. The temperature in Siberia reached 118 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 48 degrees in Celsius. That is your Arctic temperature reaching that kind of surface temperature. This is not air temperature, surface temperature. So um, that should cause a lot of concern. It should scare us. It should tell us that changing our way of development has to be more urgent than it is. And I think in the whole subject today, I was thinking this one thought consistently, which is how do I change this from a good to know subject to something which is must do? And where did we as human beings lose our track? Where did the script go wrong? uh, for example, we in India, we have a sustainable way. Being an old civilization, we have many things where many of these circular economy concepts were existing. There is even mention of Pushpa Vimana in Ramayana. If well before the Wright brothers invented the aircraft. So the concept was there. That concept was taken from birds and chariots put on bird, and that was Pushpa Vimana. So the concepts were there. Why did the credibility? Why did they not stay, or why did the credibility? Uh, 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 why was credibility not established? The reason is that many of these concepts are research lab experiments. They are not coming in the mainstream. So the real question for us, in the forum is how do we bring these concepts, this ecologic, this entire circular ecology concept into modern buildings and cities? How do we? You explained, how termites, the principle has been adopted in one building. How does it get adopted in all buildings? And how do we get scale? So the idea is on credibility. This doesn't happen and remains research and isolated projects because enough credibility is not established. So here is my take, Max. My take is that to establish credibility today, you can't really go back to the old way of sustainable living. What you need to do is establish credibility today by bringing in that much data points. So you need to gather people, all of these experiments, wherever they are, they need to, on one hand, bring it to scale. On the other hand, keep gathering data and building models which establish how much energy is saved. That's one subject. How much, water is conserved by having some coats which help water not to be absorbed. So if you have enough data points, so I see that all these technologies, if combined with the role of data sciences and machine learning, and you can gather enough data, then the subject of biomimicry can get the legitimacy that is required. And once you have legitimacy, you will be able to bring in scale. Unless you can do this at scale, because you started with explaining this is nature doing it. So nature is doing it at scale. How do we do it at similar scale? So
Excellent.
that's my 2 cents of words on this. Over to you,
No,
Mark.
excellent, excellent. I think very, very good, very good input. And how do we get to scale, right? I think the scale also has the concept of scale also has to be re-envisioned as to not just about the economy part of scale, right?
Mhm.
It has to be about the society. How do you get to societal scale and as well as ecological scale, right? I
Absolutely.
think
And
that's I
apply
think
it in
that's
different geographies, So different things are going to apply in different geographies. How do you
Mhm.
bring, the same concepts in similar regions, in similar climate zones?
Correct. I think the just because we have been able to travel, right? Humans have traveled the widest amongst other than the migratory birds, right? I think we have copied that very well and been able to travel. But most processes in nature are right next to each other, right? There's not much travel involved, and hence not much energy dispensed. But we have gone against that, and obviously, and that goes back to the same, how do you create micro economies in each region? That way, not much of travel and the whole logistics part, you know is it shouldn't be that big a deal than it
Mhm.
is right now, right? So if you like, for example, the rural economy, right? How do we enable a rural economy, and that way create local opportunities for them as a human society, right? And then also, how do we maintain the ecology around the rural space? So if we look at it that way, take a I can give you a brilliant example of this. How a company called Bata, right? It is actually, if you know what the origin of the company is, it is actually a European brand, but currently the parent entity sits somewhere in Canada. If you ask any Indian, Bata is an Indian brand. How they've brilliantly established themselves as a local brand. If you ask a Malaysian, what is Bata? It's a Malaysian brand, right? So, how do you enable that kind of a local brand nature in your business? And that way, wherever you go, you're still local. You're using local materials wherever you go. It's a very small economy that you're dealing with at a local stage. Um, and you're establishing yourself as a growth market in each of the markets, and I think that's very critical to do.
Mhm. So, Max, on one side, what concerns me is scale. On the other side, what concerns me is accountability. How do we bring in accountability? So, if it's a corporate, let's say, my company works with very large corporations. The concept which is coming up of 3P accounting,
Mhm.
profit with profit, people, planet. So you have to be accountable not just for your profit on your financial balance sheet, but there has to be a people balance sheet with things like diversity, equal employment opportunities, female, male employees, so on and so forth. And then planet accountability. What do you do in terms of recycling things and
Mhm.
ensuring that you adhere to the norms of circular economy? These things have to become more prevalent at different levels, not just at corporate levels, but also at government levels, city levels, council levels,
Mhm.
municipal levels.
Mhm.
These have to be, so the entire way in which we measure progress has to
No,
change.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think the other way to look at it is, you know um, although you can always say, hey, government should do more, right? What we should always look at, what can we do as individuals, right?
Mhm.
Right? And as corporations, you run a startup, I run my own startup. So what can we do as an individual to begin with, right? And then what can we do as companies, and then we can look at what can the government do, right? I think if we go in that order, again, it'll be better, right? So
Of
what can
course.
we do as individuals, right? So I think as individuals, this whole waste, right? This whole concept of first, Bangalore, take a city like Bangalore, right? It gets rain pretty much, you know 3, 4, 5 months of the year, right? And but then you get water issues as well. Right? So, and it's simple. It's basically rainwater harvesting. These are simple things that can be done in every house, to harvest the water that comes in as rain, and you can use that same water, because every molecule of water has stayed here for billions of years. Let's face it, it's the same water. You can say wastewater, but etc. It again comes back to you as water. The same molecule has been around for billions of years. So you're just reusing it, right? And let's not create wastewater out of water that's been there for billions of years, right? So that's the idea. So that's one area, and then this whole concept of recycling, right? Nature recycles. We should, why shouldn't we, right? As
Yeah.
individuals, right?
Fortunately for us, the energy industry has a great example of how we have leveraged biomimicry. If you look at PV systems, they very closely imitate how leaf becomes the energy system of trees. So the concept is similar, right? You're
Yep.
taking in energy from the sun, and that's a great example of what is now becoming at scale. It's being
Correct.
taken at scale. It's becoming an industry of its own, and it has a huge potential to change the way we generate energy as an entire on at a planet level. So this is a great example of what can happen if you scale it up. And same things I think need to be done. You correctly mentioned on water, but how to scale it up. So at individual level is perfect. It's very encouraging. It probably gets your oxytocin flowing. But what you want to really get is what is that one uniform way in which I solve the water problem? How do I think of it as the full ecosystem, as the water, as water is, from how it evaporates and cloud formation to how it flows from waterfalls and going all the way to sea? How do I get this whole system where I am part of the consumption chain? I'm part of the value chain, and I'm not the guy who blocks or who breaks the chain and so creates deficits. So these are the things which I think concern, and I come back to what I mentioned, that I feel that technology has a good role. On one side, um, we need to think of whatever you mentioned. Okay, our sciences. It's our understanding of how nature works and how the processes are working. You have to apply it to engineering, which means that your engineering concepts have to change. So first change required is in how you engineer things. Second thing is how you measure. So you gather enough data and you document that, you curate that data, and you build machine learning models. So there is a huge role of AI for biomimicry. Huge role, whether it is cattle, whether it is birds, whether it is water, whether it is PV systems. There is a huge role of AI systems in it. And the third is
Absolutely.
make people accountable, whether you are a government, an enterprise, and like you correctly mentioned, whether you are an individual. At each level, at every unit, let there be accountability. And once you have this, I think you've created the structure which is required for the change to happen.
No, absolutely right. I mean, I think coming back to that point of accountability, right? You put it really well. So how do we enable that accountability? Even right now, right? Why is there so much plastic in the world? Just because it's cheap, right?
Mhm.
If but without taking the full cost of recycling, how do you reuse that plastic? If you take all of that into consideration, you will you will see that the traditional bamboo, or other materials that are more biodegradable are far more valuable, right? And that's, I mean, that thinking has to come in, right? And taking the full total life cycle cost of materials has to be brought in, right? If you choose a particular material, and that's the material side. But then if you're only using, let's say you are you make oxygen concentrators, right? I'm just taking that out. You're taking the air and concentrating, right? What are you going to do with the excess CO2 and N2, etc.? Are you going to release it back into the environment, or can you do something else with it, right? So that way you
Right.
don't create waste. Again, at a simple level, if you can avoid waste, like same for hydrogen, right? You split water to get hydrogen and oxygen. What are you going to do with the oxygen, right? Can you bottle that up as well, or can you purify that, and you create a hydrogen and O2 at the same time, right? And you have various applications for both, right? Obviously. So I think that sort of a thinking mindset has to come in to avoid wastage right at the point of manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely. One more thing I observe is that if you observe the way nature operates, it operates in a distributed system. It doesn't have central system. Everything is present in different locations
I think I lost you there. What I think what Rajesh was alluding to is that we've got basically several systems in nature that are all distributed in nature, right? I think this whole distributed in nature has a lot of power because each one has its own self autonomy. You have everyone is their own CEO, so to speak, right? With that advantage, you get to you know faster decision making, distributed approach to everything, and you can grow faster, right? And if you take the whole distributed nature of ledgers that we have tried to emulate in the concept of blockchain, it is very similar, right? And there is consensus because one person's waste has to be acceptable by the other person in nature. That's how it is done. There's a few ways to actually enable that and make sure that that distributed system is what we emulate in real life, right? And that way it could be in the case of an organization where you have a central focused organization, whereas you have distributed legs or various cities with individual autonomy as to what they deliver in terms of numbers both on the economy side and human society side and the ecology side. So that sort of approach we feel works, right? I think that's the point Rajesh was coming to. I think we may have lost him, but I think he'll dial back. I think he has an issue with his laptop. So coming back to the I'm going to jump to the slide deck, right? I think Rajesh, you're back. Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, Rajesh. No problem. Yeah,
My laptop was acting up. I'm so sorry. Um,
no problem.
so
We were talking
yeah,
about the
sorry.
distributed system. Yeah.
Right. So if you look at again the way nature brings in energy through the different trees. If you look at how carbon dioxide is absorbed by forests, let's say, all of it is distributed systems. A great example of how technology can leverage this example is blockchain. Blockchain is a very distributed system. Hello?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, my video here
We can
is
hear
frozen.
you.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think your
okay.
video is frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay, so if
Yeah.
you look at the role of blockchain in creating a ledger system for accountability, we spoke of accountability. Blockchain and is a great way to bring in accountability of where is your energy coming from, where is your
I think we lost Rajesh again. So what Rajesh was saying is that accountability can be created using blockchain because that's what we are after, right? How do we get individual accountability? How do you get corporations to be more accountable? How do we get the government to be more accountable, right? And with a distributed ledger system that cannot be modified, and transactions are documented properly without any tampering. and that way you get actual data without any issues. I think that's the point he was trying to make. With that also maintains the accountability. So I think that's a very valid point that he brings up. I think if there are any questions, please feel free to type them on your screen, either on Unisu or on LinkedIn, whichever platform you're viewing in. That will be very helpful so that we can try to address those questions as well, as and when you ask them. Right. We will take more questions as and when we can get them on LinkedIn or Unisu or on YouTube, and we will answer them there as appropriate. And at this time, I'd like to summarize what we have discussed. We talked about biomimicry and sustainability, especially in a real estate concept. How we can, as individuals, as companies, as government, look at this whole accountability of bringing in economy as a subset of human societies, which is again a subset of the overall ecology. And how do we go about doing that with a few ideas? And I'm sure all you brilliant viewers have your own set of ideas. We'd love to hear from you, and would love to hear all your questions. You can put them on the platforms that you're listening into, and we'll be able to address them as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for all your time, and look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye.